Okay, so we've talked about what attitudes are, and we're talking about job satisfaction. And we just finished talking about all of the antecedents or causes of job satisfaction, things that we can adjust or things we need to account for when we're thinking about how someone is going to react to the job. How do we increase job satisfaction? So the next component of looking at this from an organizational viewpoint is how do we actually measure job satisfaction to determine that's what is actually being affected by these antecedents. So, how do you measure broad attitudes or specific facets? And it depends on the organizational purpose. So, the first big question in measuring job satisfaction, are we trying to come up with a single number, a single measure? In other words, broad job attitude. Overall, in a single scale, what do you think about your job? Or are we wanting to be more specific? Are we wanting to actually get information about what aspects of the job do you find satisfying or not satisfying? So just think about the antecedents. We were talking about the job characteristics, the social aspects, and also the growth opportunities. So right there is 3 examples of possible facets of job satisfaction. So you could ask someone, how satisfied are you of your job on a 1 to 5, 1 not satisfied, 5 very satisfied scale. But we might also ask them, how satisfied are you with the job itself, the characteristics of the job? How satisfied are you with your social interactions and your coworkers and management? And how satisfied are you with your pay, your bonuses, and your growth opportunities? So traditional method measurement of job satisfaction was very direct and forward. It was single facets, broad attitude. In general, I like my job. Disagree to agree. Recent measurement has been moving more to specific facets of job satisfaction. Satisfaction with pay, satisfaction with supervisors, etc. And the main reason for this is it may be more useful in diagnosing organizational problems or developing interventions. So, for instance, if you know all that you know is that someone has low job satisfaction, there's a lot of things you could try to increase that job satisfaction. If you know they have low job satisfaction and they're specifically dissatisfied with their coworkers and the environment of the organization, that tells you where you need to target to increase job satisfaction. So, broadly speaking, most organizations are interested in both pieces of information. They're interested in a broad single number, how satisfied are our workers? Because it's a good quick metric to determine how well are we doing at making this a good place to work. But they're also interested in specific measurements to identify problem areas that they could actually improve. So just some common established job measures, job satisfaction measures. Probably the most used is the Job Descriptive Index, the JDI. It has been widely validated. It is used in many studies on job satisfaction. It does have 5 broad dimensions: satisfaction with the type of work, satisfaction with pay and promotion opportunities, satisfaction with supervision, satisfaction with coworkers, and then satisfaction overall. And each one of these dimensions has sub questions. So, for example, the types of work include items of basically all of the core job characteristics. On pay and promotion, there's questions about pay, bonuses, promotion opportunities. So there's even additional fine-tuned information that you can get out of the JDI. Another reason it's probably widely used is that it is available for free to people to use for organizational uses. So you can go to the actual website of the JDI, you can look up Job Descriptive Index on the internet, and basically you just need to tell them why you're wanting to use the JDI, and they'll send you a copy. The Job Diagnostic Survey, the JDS, is another commonly used one. It measures satisfaction as a function of pay, security, social factors, supervision, growth, and again, an overall. So all of these scores are also going to provide you with that overall information, but they're also going to be providing you with individual facets. The Minnesota Satisfaction Questionnaire is based on the theory of work adjustment. So basically, this is based on more of kind of a career counseling viewpoint of job satisfaction. It again has been validated through multiple studies, has used a fair amount. It has 100 items with 20 facets. So a lot of times, someone might use the Minnesota Satisfaction Questionnaire if they're looking for very fine detail of exactly what is satisfying or not satisfying in a particular job. And because it's focused on the job theory of work adjustment, that's how we adjust to our work. There's a fair amount of items in there also that kind of map on top of job or work-life balance issues, or how the job interferes with life issues. Contains 100 items, 20 facets. There's also a short form with just one item per facet, 20 items. Another commonly used one is a scale that just gives us that broad information. It doesn't give us facets, and that's the FACES scale. And you'll see this actually used by a fair amount of organizations. It measures just the affective component, overall satisfaction. It can be used in many situations, and one of the reasons we see this a lot is it's also fairly nonverbal. Basically, you just circle the face that best represents how you feel about your work. So now we're going to move on to consequences. So I could spend a lot of time talking about how we measure job satisfaction, the previous studies that have found that it's been validated, but honestly, most of this work has already been well documented. Job satisfaction as a construct and the measurement of job satisfaction has been thoroughly researched, and we just, at this point, it's simply, are you wanting an overall measure or are you wanting a specific facet measure? And then you just need to find a well-validated scale. So we're going to move on to consequences. So the consequences of job satisfaction, the big one, of course, is performance, and that's what organizations want to know. It's all nice and good to say that I should make sure my workers are happy, but is it going to result in me making more money? That might be a very cutthroat way to look at the world, but most organizations, that is the bottom line. They're there to make a profit. They're there for performance. So is a satisfied worker a productive worker? A good estimate is tough to nail down, and the reason for this is that when we look across studies, we do find that there are so many other factors on performance. I previously mentioned if performance is highly constrained, job satisfaction isn't going to have a strong effect on performance. However, if there's a lot of autonomy in the job, then job satisfaction is going to have a pretty solid relationship with performance. So meta-analyses and basically literature reviews of all the studies that have looked at how satisfaction relates to performance and production have found ours between 0.14, that's explaining about 2% of performance, to about 0.3, which is about 9%. However, a recent meta-analysis that specifically looked at jobs where you had autonomy in how you did your job actually found it to be an R of 0.59. So let's briefly look at that. So if we're looking across jobs, all types of jobs, we're finding a relationship with basically job satisfaction being related to productivity or performance between 2 to 9%. And that's still not bad. That means that if you can increase job satisfaction, there is a portion of productivity that is going to be affected. Not all of productivity. Productivity is being predicted by a lot of things, but at least 2 to 9% of it is being explained by job satisfaction. And if the job has a fair amount of autonomy, where you have some control over how you get your job done and how much you do in your job, in that case, we're seeing almost 30+%, in fact, 36% approximately, of performance is being explained by job satisfaction. So that's a pretty strong argument that job satisfaction is important in almost all jobs and are very important in some jobs. So again, correlations tend to be stronger the more complex the job is and the more autonomy the person has in the job. Contextual performance. So outside of performance, remember contextual performance is basically OCBs, organizational citizenship behaviors, helping out others, being kind of pro-social in your organization. These relationships with job satisfaction is stronger than task performance. So basically we find that job satisfaction across the board is more related to contextual performance than it is overall performance. But both of them are definitely validated and has been found in studies. Consequences withdrawal behavior. So again, job satisfaction has been negative related to withdrawal behaviors. So absenteeism, for instance. A cost to companies is a fair amount. So a recent estimate found that basically companies were losing across all types of work about an average of almost $800 per year because of employees being absent. So basically that is whenever anyone calls in and misses a day or shows up halfway through the day, anytime that basically an employee is not actually there producing for the company, the average cost is about $800 a year per employee. And only about 33% of that absenteeism has been connected to actual personal illness, which means about 67% is for other reasons. Can be family issues, can be you got good tickets to an event and you want to make an excuse to go, you may just not feel like going to work. A lot of that comes in. So Again, think about this, that if you really have no option, you either you show up to work and you get paid, you don't show up to work, you get fired. You're going to have less of a relationship between job satisfaction and these absenteeism. But if you're in a job where you can basically just not show up for a day and there's not going to be a lot of repercussions, you got a lot of, again, autonomy in the kind of work you do, then job satisfaction is going to be a high predictor of absenteeism. So basically, Steers and Rhodes looked at a model of absenteeism, and we're going to talk about these. So we're going to look at the models of how absenteeism occurs and what influences it to discuss how job satisfaction can influence absenteeism. So Steers and Rhodes basically said there's two major things to think about absenteeism beyond attitudes, and that's the ability to attend and the pressure to attend. So let's take a look at this model. So what I've said from the previous slide is we have found that job satisfaction can be related to employee attendance, and employee attendance is important to organizations. Employees want the people they're paying to be on the job when they're supposed to be and working that whole time. And there has been a relationship found between job satisfaction and employee attendance, but it's not a very strong one. And that's because, according to Steers and Rhodes, we also have to worry about attendance motivation and ability to attend and the pressure to attend. So job satisfaction results in attendance motivation. So think about the model of planned behavior we talked about in the last lecture set. That was the idea that you need attitudes, you need the actual social environment, and then you need the actual perception of your ability to do something. And those three things lead to intentions. So attendance motivation is that intention. If you have high job satisfaction, you're going to have attendance motivation. You're going to want to attend. You're going to plan to attend. Now, attendance motivation is further influenced by pressures to attend. Economic market conditions, incentive reward system, work group norms, personal work ethics. So again, job satisfaction isn't the only thing that leads to attendance motivation. You could have very low job satisfaction, but basically you know if I lose this job, I won't be able to get another one. Poor economic conditions. Or if I miss a day of work, I'm going to not get the rewards for showing up to all 5 days of work. Or if I don't show up for work, yeah, I don't care about my job, but all my coworkers are going to think very poorly of me. Or just I was raised to always go to work. All of those are going to also influence it. So those factors can change the relationship between job satisfaction and whether or not you actually attend. Once you have the attendance motivation, you've decided to attend because both the pressures to attend and the job satisfaction both leave you to make that plan. We also then have to worry about the ability to attend. So if you have family responsibilities, transportation problems, illness, not all employee absenteeism has anything to do with motivation or satisfaction. Sometimes it is unavoidable. My car broke down. I couldn't attend. I am so sick I can't get out of bed, regardless of my job satisfaction. So that's why we find that job satisfaction is related to employee attendance, but it's not as strongly related as we'd think because there's so many other factors. Another consequence of job attitude is full withdrawal behaviors. So absenteeism is basically just not showing up for work, being gone for a day, calling in sick. Lateness is basically the idea of you are always shaving some of the time off of what you're working. You're constantly showing up late. According to Blau in 1994, chronic lateness is predicted by job satisfaction negative 0.39. So that means the higher your job satisfaction, the less likely you are to be chronically late. So again, job satisfaction in this case is explaining just under 16% of chronic lateness. So the more satisfied you are, the less you're going to be late. The less satisfied you are, the more you're going to be late. Meta-analyses show, again, a relationship of an R of about 0.21 negative between facets of satisfaction and lateness, each one of the individual facets. Steers and Rhodes' model also has been applied to lateness. So again, job satisfaction in this case, again, the attendance motivation, I'm satisfied with my job, I'm not going to be late. But even if I'm not satisfied, I still might not be late if the economic conditions, if the incentive rewards, the work group norms, the personal work ethic means I'm going to be there on time anyway. But let's assume those pressures aren't there. Then, if I'm satisfied, I'm going to try to be on time. But again, can I be on time? Ability to attend. Is there other factors that are limiting my ability to be there on time? And that is related now to employee lateness. Another consequence is withdrawal behaviors is turnover. So turnover is actually not just being late or missing a few days, it's leaving the company permanently. And it's fairly expensive for companies. The estimate is that even for entry-level work, 8 hours minimum wage effectively, costs about $3,500 to replace an employee who's paid $8 an hour. So basically what you find is that the cost to replace someone is often 1.5 to 2.5 times the employee's salary, especially in more complex jobs. So the amount of time it takes to actually find someone, to put out ads, the time it takes for people to do interviews, to do selection, to finally bring the person in and to train them. In other words, to get someone who is doing their job well but leaves, to get someone new into that company doing the same level of productivity takes time, and that time is expensive. It basically costs the company both in actual costs, cost to interview, cost to do selections, cost to put out ads, but also indirect costs, lost productivity during that time. Now, this can be good for a company if an ineffective employee leaves. So if you have someone that is doing a poor job, they're probably costing you more than the cost to replace them would be, especially over time. There's two main antecedents or causes of turnover: the perceived ease of movement and the perceived desirability of movement. So there's a modest relationship between job satisfaction and turnover. So again, the more satisfied you are, generally the less likely you are to leave a company. However, it's only affecting the perceived desirability of movement. In other words, you're perceiving it as, well, I don't really want to move because I'm satisfied. But there's some other factors in there. And now we're going to talk about a couple models about withdrawal behavior. So the turnover models, this is Hom and Griffin, and they basically suggest there's two paths to people quitting. Both of them involve job satisfaction. So the first path is the top path. You have job satisfaction. In this case, you have positive job satisfaction results in you having very little thoughts of quitting. You're much more likely to stay. Negative job satisfaction results to much more thoughts of quitting, and you're more likely to quit. Now again, think about the theory of planned behavior. The thoughts of quitting is that actual intention. That's creating strategies and plans. So job satisfaction in this model is shown as the only thing leading to that. But we both know the social norms and also your perceived ability to leave are going to have a strong influence also on whether that actually ends up in a behavior, quitting and staying. The second path is the job satisfaction leads to attitudes towards quitting. In other words, that the job satisfaction itself is an attitude. And then it creates an attitude towards quitting. And that if you have a high attitude towards quitting, I think I should quit this job. I think it would be best for me. It has utility. At that point, it results in a behavior that isn't quitting or staying, it's job searching. And that the job search then is the behavior or the intention of the plan. And if that job search comes up with a positive comparison of alternatives, that can result in either quitting or staying. So let's just walk through that. I'm satisfied with my job. I'm unlikely to actually create an attitude towards quitting. I'm unlikely to be doing a job search. I'm unlikely to ever compare alternatives. I'm dissatisfied with my job. I now form an attitude towards quitting. I should quit. It results in an intention, a job search. I start looking for jobs. I start actually applying, and then if I get an offer, I compare the new job to my current job. If I think my current job is still better, I stay. If I think this new job is better, I leave. So this is kind of, both of these are a little bit of a rational model. It means we're basically going through and deciding. The top model, job satisfaction, thoughts of quitting, quitting or staying, is a little bit more of an emotional response. I just want to leave. And it kind of happens, that model is less likely. It's supported sometimes, but it's usually only supported when there's a lot of alternatives for other jobs out there. In other words, we're removing a lot of influences that would force someone to stay even in a job they weren't satisfied in. The second model, job satisfaction, attitudes towards quitting, job search, explains a lot more commonly what we find. Now there is a third model looking at this, and it basically says that all of this is assuming kind of a rational process, that we're constantly self-evaluating our job satisfaction to decide if we want to quit or not, or we're constantly evaluating our job satisfaction to decide if we want to think about quitting and do a job search. The unfolding model is suggested by Lee and colleagues, and it suggests a shock to the system is what propels turnover. And what they're suggesting is that job satisfaction, thoughts of quitting, attitude towards quitting, job search, All of these are not directly involved, generally, in a lot of the times, a decision to quit or stay. What happens is a shock to the system. And what a shock means is something occurs that makes you think about your job satisfaction, makes you think about your job in a new light, that makes you compare the alternatives. And that it's a fairly quick process. So, for example, your company downsizes and 20 people are laid off. You're not one of them, but you know you just missed that cutoff. That's a shock to the system. Suddenly you go, wow, do I like working here? What are my alternatives? Are there other jobs out there? Oh, there is another job out there? I should go ahead and quit. Or shock to the system. The manager that you've worked with for 20 years retires, and the new manager comes in, and you don't like that new manager. That's a shock to the system. A shock is a change, and it's the change that makes us evaluate our job satisfaction. This also has been found to be fairly well supported. All of these models explain some of how turnover occurs, and all of them do involve job satisfaction to some degree, but notice job satisfaction is always one of the very start points of a longer chain of events. Counterproductive work behaviors are also directly related to job satisfaction, so any behavior that brings or is intended to bring harm to an organization, its employees, or its stakeholders, arson, blackmail, bribery, sabotage, theft, political activities that advance your agenda, not the company's agenda, and the correlation between job satisfaction and counterproductive behaviors, again, ranges from 0.10 to about 0.25. So again, doesn't explain a lot of it, but explains some of it, and again, happier workers are less likely to do these behaviors.